Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Crossing Bridges Talk Show. I'm your host, Larry Montgomery. This is my co host, Will. Will, introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm William Montgomery. Pleasure to be here.
You forgot your line?
Yeah,
Golly, man. Have to write that down in a script.
sometimes it happens.
Anyway, we're getting ready to enjoy our Independence Day weekend, and we have a topic we'd like to present. It is why don't black men go to church? Yeah, I know it's a mouthful and it's probably a controversial topic because we've got all kinds of folks in the community who have various opinions about church and religion. But I think that in these troubling times that we're living in, um, some of us might want to reconsider our thoughts. We always ask the same question, you know, why am I here? You know, I mean, I think we're a little more important, add a little more value to life than ants, or frogs or fish. I mean, everything has a family. Everything doesn't necessarily appreciate that, but people, humans, as we call ourselves, we're all in a different category. And so, again, you still have to ask your question. Yeah, ask yourself, well, why am I here? What happened before I got here and what happens when I leave here, type of a thing. But anyway, let's talk about why black men don't go to church. I want to start with a conversation from an article I read um, that's entitled "Are Men Anti-Church?" and it's written by Gina Stepp, a white woman. And so I think we could start there. While some people contend that traditional Christianity is oppressive to women, one could argue that it has not been providing much satisfaction to men either, despite claims of entrenched biblical patriarchy. I didn't pronounce that, but you get the word. In
Mhm.
fact, a recent survey reports that men have all that but abandoned the churches of America, Australia, and United Kingdom and New Zealand. Now, my point here, uh, want to find a wife or a good meal? Go to church. That philosophy has been replaced with want to find a wife? Google it. Want a good meal? Nuke it. But back to the article. One of the survey's most interesting findings is that while women may be seen in church fairly regularly and in respectable numbers, men are a much rarer commodity. The absence of men in churches is not a new phenomenon, nor is it confined to a few English speaking nations. The trend has been commonly observed and accepted as unremarkable throughout the Western world. Drawing from this particular survey, the author offers additional reasons for the poor showing of men at church. One, not wanting to dress up. Two, not excuse me, not wanting to give their household authority over to a pastor. And number three, for many, the heavy influence of sports in their lives. One of the most important of these things is comradeship and fellowship among the reasons why men don't go to church. In the Middle Ages, romantic love became the ideal of human love and also the ideal between God and man. Erotic love became the highest type of love. But prior to that, friendship was the highest type of love. This gentleman argues by friendship, let me see, by friendship does not mean the casual golf partner variety, but friends in the sense that involves battle, suffering, and the redemption of the world. Now, one other point she makes in this article is the separation and sacrifice is a reason for men not going to church. Um, at a certain point in a boy's life, he does not. At a certain point in a boy's life, he goes through a separation period from his mother, in which he turns to other models for imitation, so that he can learn to be a responsible man and support a family. And so, right there, I want to stop and go to see if you have any comments. Otherwise, I'm going to go to the video.
Yeah. Of course, I have some comments. I think they.
Is this from personal experience, or is this, just thoughts?
Well, we'll get to my personal experience
Okay.
later on in the video, but I think some of the things that they overlook though is well, we both know that the church has been under attack since its inception. So um, it goes without saying that society has not really leaned towards people going to church. Everything is to get people away from church. The way the things we do, the way we live, the vices that's out there. Everybody has their own vice. Whether it's sports or illegal substances. There's a wide range of stuff in between, but all these things have been to keep us preoccupied and distracted. So it goes without saying that you know something that would keep us together or make us stronger spiritually and emotionally and keep us together would definitely be under attack. So I think our society that we live in doesn't really promote the church as needed. And sometimes they do have some churches that are not really the ones that you want to be going to. So like, it's important to have the right church home in the right area. And like I said, if you come across some that you don't prefer to be around, that may contaminate the situation as far as somebody choosing to be a part of the church as well.
Well, okay, works for me. This video we're going to show gives 7 reasons why black men don't come to church. This is slightly different from the first article we went over, because that was just generally about men
Mm-hmm.
from a white woman's perspective. And so now we're going to hear and see a little video. Let me see if I can get that up here. Okay.
7 reasons why men don't attend church. Every Sunday, church pews fill up with despondent women who are forced to worship without the men in their lives. A recent survey by Ellison Research found that 31% of men never attend church even on holidays. This sad statistic prompts parishioners and ministers alike to ask, where are the men? While it's true that several men spend their Sundays satisfying their vices for sports, beer, and sleep, men who don't attend church usually have more substantial reasons for not attending. 1. Their fathers didn't attend church. Many men give their sons the impression that the church is not a place for real men by stereotyping Christian men as passive, effeminate, and henpecked, qualities no man desires, says Frederick Davis, assistant pastor of the Almeida Church of Christ in Houston, Texas. As a result of their macho posturing, these men are inadvertently teaching their sons that church is only for women and wimps and propagating new generations of unchurched men. A man's lackadaisical attitude towards church attendance can influence his children's perceptions of religion. This behavior is especially destructive if the man has a son. It is difficult for a mother to convince her son that attending church is important if her husband invalidates her arguments by sleeping late on Sundays. I would always wonder why my mom made me go to church when my father didn't, says Andre Ligon, a 40-year-old lawyer. I didn't think church was important because he never went. Do they have to work? As companies downsize and layoffs lurk around every corner, men feel compelled to work as much as they can to provide some measure of security for their families. Neglecting their own spiritual growth is a small sacrifice for men who desire to keep their families out of dire straits. When I got married and had children, I had to stop going to church as much as I used to because I had to get a steady job. I worked whenever I could get something, which often meant on Sundays. Something had to give. Unfortunately, it was church. 3 too many collections. With rising unemployment, higher taxes, and other financial woes, the last thing any man wants to see when he goes to church is a pastor with his hand out asking for more than his fair share of his income. I couldn't take it anymore, says Paul Johnson, a 52-year-old mailroom supervisor. Before I could put my wallet away from the first offering, a battalion of collection plates would bombard me again. At one point, I thought I'd have to start paying admission. 4 services are too long and inflexible. Kenneth Davis, a 53-year-old teacher, is a football fanatic. He loves to watch games from the kickoff until the final seconds tick away. However, going to church usually spoils his plans. By the time they're done with announcements, hymns, and excruciatingly long sermons, it's almost halftime, Davis says. I know that going to church is important, but I like some time on Sundays to relax and do what I like to do. Reverend John L. Hart acknowledges that services are sometimes too long, but he attributes it to waning church attendance. It's true that we sometimes have too many things going on during service, but the pulpit is challenged to get in as much as possible because Sunday is the only day we see most the men we do have, he said. 5 They have lost faith in God or do not believe in God. Men who grew up with a firm religious foundation have an easier time coping with adversity, but a test of faith sometimes can be enough to send even the most faithful servant fleeing from the fold. Dwayne Monroe, for example, was a model Christian. As a teenager, Monroe never missed a chance to worship the Lord. He attended Sunday school, Bible study, and was the pioneer of his church's youth ministry. But his faith was tested when his father grew ill with prostate cancer. Monroe, whose mother died in a car accident, prayed daily for the Lord to heal his father, but to no avail. The elder Monroe died when his son was 17, leaving the frightened child parentless. Feeling the Lord had forsaken him, Monroe cut all ties with his church and has not been back since. I was always so faithful, says the 26-year-old sales clerk. But God took both of my parents from me and left me all alone. How could a God I'd been so faithful to leave me all alone? But he is only one of a swelling rank of men who refuse to accept the concept of an almighty God. I have never seen any physical evidence of God's existence, said James Turner, a 37-year-old engineer. We're taught to be logical in all aspects of our lives, but when it comes to religion, we are supposed to throw our logic out of the window and rely solely on faith. I'm sorry, but I just can't do that. Besides, if there were really a God, do you think the world would be so screwed up? Reverend Clarence James, lecturer and author of a series chronicling African American history, culture, and involvement in the Christian church, understands their dilemma. Given the state of America, I can empathize with the men who refuse to believe that God would allow this country to become such a rancid place. But things can only get worse if our men stop believing and lose faith, James said. All I can do is ask non-believers to come to church one Sunday. Hopefully, we will say something, or they will see something that will convince them that God is alive and working in their lives. 6 The church is hypocritical. Immoral behaviors such as sexual misconduct and embezzlement by ministers and church leaders were cited as reasons why men avoid the church. I was appalled by all the backbiting and pettiness at my former church, says Eric Townsend, a 22-year-old student. Those people were supposed to be Christians, but they sure didn't act like Christians. I feel that I exhibit the tenets of Christianity outside of church much better than many of those people who attend church religiously. While Hart acknowledges the hypocrisy in the church, he believes that it should not deter men from attending. There are many untrue images in the church, but people must realize that their commitment should be to Christ rather than the people who comprise the church. People often believe that Christians are supposed to be perfect when in fact, we aren't, Hart said. 7 Insensitive pulpit. Several of the men interviewed for this piece agree that the church is unsympathetic to their plights. Since many men attend church to mend their battered egos, they get upset when the minister adds insult to injury by attacking them in his sermon. I admit that men are victims of an insensitive pulpit, Hart said. Historically, we, ministers, have spewed unintended condemnations toward men. Now they are rebelling against the church by not showing up. Whereas it is difficult to rebel against employers or other authority figures in their lives without negative consequences, insurgence against the church is easier because the consequences are not so immediate. By not attending church, men feel powerful and in control because they are finally able to challenge authority and get away with it, James says. All any man wants to hear is that he is doing a good job. The church needs to be more sensitive to that fact. Have you seen a decline in male church attendance? What are other reasons why they refuse to attend worship services?
Okay, a lot of information there. You know, comments? You got to repeat that.
My apologies.
uh,
The one about the hypocrisy and things of that nature, and the untrustworthiness. I mean, it's hard to go somewhere, and I mean, I know they say you should still go, but that's why I said you need to find an alternate place, because learning from somebody that's deceitful, it kind of undercuts the whole point of going to church. Why am I going to go and listen to this person, trust them, or learn what they're teaching when they're not teaching the right thing? Because most people learn by what they see, you know. And so it's like hard to really find a place that's genuine and not just there for monetary reasons. Because as one of the things were mentioned, they do like to pass the plate around, like the donation plate around a lot. And it's like, okay, you got my 10%. Okay, and you got your building fund, and you got the youth choir fund, and you got this fund, this fund. I mean, and it's kind of like a captive audience. It's not like you're saying, hey, give us what's on your heart. Everybody's looking at who's holding that plate at that time. So it's kind of, you know, peer pressure, slash, whatever. Uh, when you go to church, or when you go to churches like that.
well, you said a lot. Okay,
Mhm.
in just a few words. A couple of quick comments, and then we'll continue the discussion. Um, People tend to react to things that they see. Talk about the hypocrisy in the church. Okay, one of the points in the Bible is the one without sin gets to throw the first stone. So people tend to look and comment and judge, but what they're looking at. The thing is that you decided what you want to look at. You say you decided what channel to turn to, you know, and you decided it based on a particular reason, curiosity, assumptions, whatever. But you normally see, you usually see what you're looking for when you start looking at something. Otherwise, there's no benefit in looking over there. You know what I mean? Secondly, and more importantly, to me, at my age, the point that was made earlier about friendship in the church. And all of this is kind of, intertwining. There's no one particular item, even though there was this list, there's no one particular item that really one could hang the hat on and say, well, this is why I don't go and I'm justified in it. You don't go because you decided not to go. Okay. When we talk about politics, people complain about the results of a vote. But did you get into it, roll up your sleeves, and try to work out what should be voted on? Is the question. Number one. Number two, did you roll up your sleeves and say, look, I'm going to sit at the table and help make the decision on what is voted on? You know, so if you don't like what you're looking at, either turn away or get in there and change it. Right? That's number one. Um, I've been to a couple of different churches. I ain't gonna say, I'm a perfect, Christian, but I am, I guess, a typical person. You know, Men don't do things from emotion; they do things for a reason. The practical side. I'm in a problem. I got things not going my way, or whatever. I got nobody to battle with me. Let me go to church and see if God will help me. Now, that whole mentality, excuse me, it says one thing, says something within itself. So when I go to church, went to church or whatever. I'm looking for God to do something for me, for whatever He's going to do to manifest in my life. And that's not necessarily how God works. That's not justification for, like, well, uh, well, He didn't do what I asked Him to do. That's not the justification. You went and you asked for something when you felt like going and asking for it. God sits there and says, okay, well, you finally showed up. Okay. Now you want me to just jump through hoops for you because you finally showed up. Now I've been standing here calling you and calling you from day one. No, back that up. I sent you here for a reason, and you just went on your willy dilly way until you got around this thing. Oh well, let me go check with God to see what He might, how He can help me out of this mess or whatever. When you really think about it, you got two things going on here. You got you and you got God. So that's one conversation. But more importantly, if you were of the mindset that, look, when I get around to it, and that makes you what? The leader? If God is the head of everything, that would make Him the leader, right?
Hmm.
So me coming when I feel like it says something to God, right? Like God don't have feelings, you know? Doesn't He tell you that He's cried for situations that, yeah, He could have changed it a particular way if He wanted to, but He didn't change it because He had a reason to do it that way. I have a reason for you to go through this so you can learn something, so you can realize that I'm here to help you. This is from God's perspective. That I want to help you, but I can't help you if you keep turning your back on me, about, when you get around to it, when you feel like it, when there's that much pressure on you, because God is going to have His way. He had no choice in that. He's going to have His way. One of the excuse me, one of the points is made about the rancid world. The devil just get busy with my voice. The rancid world. Well, the world has a role in this whole thing too. You know, the world wants to do one thing one way. God said, "No, I want you to do it this way." And so now there's that battle. You know, well, I got free will. I do whatever I want. Yeah, and you could also realize that you should also realize that whatever consequences come with your decisions are yours. So you want it that way, you got what you got. You want to do it my way, you'll get what I give you when I give it to you, the way I give it to you. And I'm gonna tell you, son, this is kind of off the rail. When God does it, it's done right. You see, you can have all kinds of problems with it, but if He did it, He said, "That's what I want you to have," it will work out.
Hmm.
And I testify about this house we in now. Man, I didn't see this coming. Didn't see it coming. And then after it got here, the trials that we went through to get here, it was like I get up every morning, I'm amazed that it all came together for our good. You know, I
Hmm.
mean, I could say, well, I want more lawn in the front. Why? I ain't mowing lawn. Well, I pay somebody if I had the money. I pay him. When you don't have the money because he didn't give it to you yet, but you're paying for it. It's getting done. I just a little example. But and so prayer works. It doesn't necessarily have to work at the moment you ask for it. You know, it could, it may not, you know, but it will work at some point. Otherwise, you'd be standing there in front of God asking him, "Well, how come it didn't turn out like I wanted it?" He'll explain it to you. You know. But anyway, I've got some more points to make here, and this is more, and we can go back to these 7 points if you want to afterwards. But this here kind of takes it to another level. I'm sorry. Let me just get to it real quick. Um, Now, just because I had this thing organized like I wanted to, it's just can't find what I'm looking for. I'm gonna find it. And well, what the heck? Okay, here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Uh, you know, this is a shame. Well,
Yeah.
I'm looking at this thing, and I know it's supposed to be right here in front of me. And oh, here it is. It's up here at the top. So stupid. Okay, here. Now, there was another survey done. 'Cause I Googled all this stuff. A general survey of non attendees revealed that black men do not attend church because here's 4 points. Number one, of poor and irrelevant sermons, which lack of meaningful worship experience. Number two, disbelief in God because spiritual values were not emphasized while growing up. Three, hypocrisy of church members and leaders. And four, ineffective outreach. So, just to kind of peel back just a couple of them, and this was written by a pastor. Um, why don't brothers go to church? This is a question that I often meditate on, and here are some of my reflections. Disappointed because, as a group, they grew up without a father in a home on a level that is disproportionate to the rest of society, leaving them with no pattern to model after in the pursuit of manhood. Growing up in poverty, attending a poor neighborhood public school, or being targeted by police in a deceitful war on drugs. Now, he makes a few points here about that war on drugs, and we probably talked about this before, but I just want to give you what the point that he's making here, that the war on drugs is deceitful in the sense that black men use and sell drugs at the same rate as white and Hispanic males, but are 6 times likely than either group to see jail time. Once in jail, they are labeled as felons with little to no rights when they go back into mainstream society. They cannot vote, cannot live in public housing, cannot apply for a number of jobs, and in many instances can't get public assistance. The only recourse these men have, at least in their mind, is a life of crime. The prison population has swelled as a result to 2.3 million people or more, the largest in the world, with well over 40% of that population being black and many more under correctional control. Now, without dwelling on that particular point, the next point, at one time the church was a place for leadership and direction for the community. But as soon as church became a lucrative venture, i.e., the prosperity gospel, it became very hard to differentiate the hustlers on the street and the hustlers behind the pulpit. Black leadership from the church has in many instances abandoned the community for money. My point off the rail here. The church is the second battlefield for Christians. The first is their mind, but the devil's hunting ground is the place one would expect to always find his prey. And where would that be?
Church.
In the church.
Uh-huh.
We just went there and we there. It's like cattle going to the,
Water.
yeah. And so, but going there with a complete understanding of why you're going there makes a big difference. I'm going there because I'm pressed and I'm stressed and I want God to do something for me because now I decided I need God. God was always there pulling at me, trying to get me to come to, to Him. You can go either by way of going to church, because there's a reason for church, or you could just get down on your knees by your bed. They call that bedside Baptist, and pray. You say, well, I don't know how to pray. Pray is just like having a conversation with the person standing next to you. And you just open and honest. There may be some, little protocols here and there, but that's only as a guide, you know, like A, B, C, D type thing. Make sure you point this out, point that out, point that out, right? But in a conversation with somebody, what do? The first thing you do, you greet them, right? You recognize them, you know, and then you might indicate to them, well, who they are and why you standing there talking to them. You know, then you might explain why you're standing there talking to them, and then you go on and you listen to what they have to say. Hard part, listen for them to respond. Then what do? Thank them and go and say goodbye. That's prayer in a nutshell. Just like having a conversation with somebody you walked up on in the street. But here in that conversation, prayer, you could be but frank, straight up. God, I done messed up. God, they are beating my head in. God, I need help. Whatever you want to talk about. He's there, he's listening. You know? And you pray, and you can pray as many times as you want, over and over and over again, 2, 3 times a day, 2, 3 times an hour, 2, 3 times a minute, constantly. The first thing you ask yourself is God so busy that he wouldn't remember what I said or what I asked him for? Those things you got to, you learn. And church is a place where to teach you that, but just common sense would tell you, like, look, I never prayed until the day that they put the handcuffs on me and carried me away for a crime I didn't do. So I'm like, well, if the system is set up to be so correct, why did they arrest me? And I told them I didn't do it, but they didn't believe me. you know, so they took me and put me in jail because they thought I was going to run away. I told them I wasn't, but they didn't believe me. You see what I'm saying? It's just that's how it is. And so now finally you turn to God and say, "Oh God, could you help me get me out of here?" Uh, Wait for an answer. Uh, I mean, you know, even and I can't think of the two guys who were in jail, put in jail in the biblical times, and they sat there and they prayed and sang songs and whatever, and before midnight, the jail crumbled, and they were able to get out. I think it was Paul and probably Paul. But anyway, you know, but they were faithful before they got put in jail. They got put in jail because they were doing what God wanted them to do. So, it's just like a little, tidbit. But not going to church is where we're at, and the impact that has on your male children, period, and what that means, why we do this conversation every week. Fatherlessness is a problem, and it's a big problem, and it's exacerbating itself on our community. Oh, I don't go to church because my father didn't go. Does that mean that you shouldn't go? Oh, I don't go to church because the pastor, he acts like a pimp. Does that mean you shouldn't go? You know, that might mean that when you sit there, that you might have a jaundiced eye, and be looking to, hey, let me see what's real, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and if I have any questions, what do I do? When I get out of church, go to God, go to the Bible, and say, well, yeah, he talked about this, whatever. God give me clarity so I understand. Because now I've seen it, and my child who's with me seen it, or my child who will come along, might see this, and I need to be able to explain to them, what it is you're looking at. You know, the devil is busy. He's doing his job. Period. We, but we do know his end. We do know his end. So he can be busy all he wants doing the wrong thing. And have you ever heard of the devil doing anything good without some sinister motive behind it? No,
Yeah.
that's
Nope.
not him. That's not what he does. That's not his purpose. Because God could have straightened him out day one. As soon as he saw him leave the rail, he could have straightened him out. But he didn't. He didn't for a reason. And so here we are. So, comments? Or should I go with my final points?
I mean, I I'm hearing what you're saying. I just disagree slightly because, like I said, I wouldn't go to that church that pastor's acting that way. I would say find another church if possible. I mean, there's down here in the South, there's churches all over the place, and you can find a good one. But if you feel like that church that you're currently going to, or the one that you had a bad experience in, is not for you, find another one, because nobody should have to go to that church if that person's not, because they might not be teaching the word, And then if you got little people, young folks
Well,
learning,
how would you know if they were teaching the word unless you
well,
went there?
if you go to the church and you don't have a good feeling about it, if you're listening to the pastor and you don't agree with what he's saying, because there are some pastors that will say some stuff that you might not agree with, and you have free will to go to another church who has better standing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm
Well,
not saying don't give them a chance, but you give them a chance, you can still go to another church. It's not just one church in the world. There is
well,
another church down the street.
you're right. But what I want to add to what you're saying, okay, is that if you pray about it before you go, I want to go to church this Sunday. Okay, so, oh, where do I go? Well, there's a church next door and there's a church across the street. Which one do I go to? So you pray about it before you go. Lord, please lead me to the right church, the church that you would have me to go. You would have me to go to. Lord, lead me to the church you would have me to go to. Okay. So you walk out the door and there's a big rock on your right foot. So you make a left. You go to that church next door and you get there. And the pastor's doing his thing or whatever, and everything's cool. You go there a few more times or whatever, and everything's good. And you amen, 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 amen. Anyway, and you go along with it. What is your responsibility to yourself, or your responsibility to yourself? Let me answer that for you. Is to check and verify. Pastor said this in church. Let me go back and read it. Let me get understanding. Lord, this is what was discussed in church today. This is the points that were made. I'm looking in the Bible. I don't really see that, or I see it in a different light. Give me understanding, because I want to do what you want me to do. I want to get it right with you. It's not being right with the pastor, being right with you. You sent me there. And so things might change. God may have sent you there to get you to realize who is most important. The pastor's important, but he still has a responsibility to God, and he's still subject to life. And so any questions, and just on general GP, God, I'm reading in the Bible. I didn't, I don't understand, whatever. Help me understand. He may have sent you to that church to be the one person to sit there And at the right moment, Pastor, I have a question, and blow his whole thing up, or validate everything that the pastor's been doing. You see what I'm saying?
I don't see what you're saying. Nobody asks questions in church. Church is the pastor talking and everybody taking his word as the gospel and
We'll
they
see.
believe it. But if they're not speaking God's will,
We'll
then
see.
that's a problem. That's what I'm saying.
We'll see. And let me clear that up for you. People do ask questions in church.
Not everybody.
There, listen to what I'm saying, son.
Hmm.
People do ask questions in church. They may not ask it, more than likely, they're not going to ask it during the sermon. But on their way in the church door to say hello, Pastor, I got a question. Or on their way home, I'll see you next week, Pastor, but I got a question first. Or there's just general conversation. You see, there's a time and a place and a way to ask a question. You can ask anything of anybody if you ask at the right time and the right and with the right using the right words, with the right spirit. So that's not a problem. And if you got a pastor in front of you who is almighty, that ain't the one you want to be in front of, because we all human and we all fall short of the glory of God. Okay? So you got that kind of person standing in front of you, turn and run as fast as you can, because that's going to be a problem. You know, one of the points that was made earlier about the church, this pimper, hustler type thing, because a lot of pastors have gotten away from what the Word of God means to not only them, but also what people see in you, see about you. I mean, you go into a church, for example, where there are 1,000 people in the pews, big church, a lot of money being brought in there. Pastor comes out, he riding around a limousine. Pastor comes out, got a private jet. Pastor come out, got a house bigger than the church. Now, I'm not complaining about what pastors make, but I want to make sure that people understand, how big a house do you need to live in when there are so many people in your community without a place to lay their head? You see what I'm saying? I'm not saying you there to be everything to everyone, but you need to keep your house in order. You talking to people so they can get their house in order, but yours is all out of order. Oh, I got a 15,000 square foot house. Church paying for it. You know, and half the members in the church live in an apartment, making some landlord rich. That sound right to you? But I'm just saying. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying.
I mean, you kind of validated my point. You said that if you have a pastor there that's thinking that he's almighty, you said turn and run from him. That was my point exactly. If you recognize that there's a problem there, don't continue going to that church, but there are other churches where you can go. I do recommend highly to go to church. I'm just saying, you know, use your
No,
best.
I'm adding to what you're
Yeah.
saying. I'm saying that yeah, that might be the church next door to you, which is cool.
Mhm.
That's the one you went to because you believe that the Lord led you there. That conversation about the pastor living in such a big house and half the congregation paying rent somewhere, you know, maybe the question that you were sent there to ask at the appropriate time for the light bulb to come on in the pastor's head or in some of the other members' heads that, yeah, we are, paying our tithes to the church, for the church to do the right thing. But all we want to do is come in on Sunday morning, sit down, hear the word, and leave. We don't want to stand there and put in a few extra hours, roll up our sleeves, and sit down and say, well, Pastor, what kind of things are we spending the money on to help the people? The pastor might say, well, look, I'm too busy to do that, but you can do it. That means you got to step up in your offering is not just the dollars that you put on the table, but your time. You see, we had that conversation about offering and tithing. You pointed out 10%, and I told you that was under the Old Testament. That was a conversation. I say that today, but the 10% rule was under the Old Testament. Under the New Testament, you have free will. Give what's in your heart. Okay, so you want to stand there and criticize what the pastor's doing with the money, but you don't want to get up and stand there by the orphan when they counting the money. Talking about, what are we going to do with this money? I'm not saying bully anybody. I'm just saying, look, if you don't say it, then you can't say that they knew it. You know what I mean? They knew to do better. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But that's why God sent you there to help them understand there's a different way. But anyway, so those are some points. We're 45 minutes into this, and I don't think we really finished and beat some of these points into the ground, because it's really, as we said earlier, you have free will. You can go to any church you want to for any reason you want to. I just want you to have an understanding as to why, when you just make that decision, there's a responsibility that you have in making that decision. I can sit here and criticize because I got an opinion about everything. But if I stop and think, I say, well, I've been there and I've done that, or I've seen that before, and things should be different. Pointed out. So, oh, any final comments?
Nope. Like I said, we got free will, and if you find yourself in need of a church home, you should definitely seek one out, because it can definitely edify your soul and get you closer to God.
But you want to pray on it first.
Like I said, if you feel like you need to find a church home, because
pray on it first.
Your spirit's going to lead you to where your spirit's going to go. I mean, you can pray about it and not get a response until next year, but you can walk by a building and oh man, I feel something about that church. They're singing my song. When you walk in there, sometimes your spirit grabs you, without having to pray. You can be walking by someplace and get a feeling.
No. See, if you don't pray on it, a spirit might grab you.
Like I said,
but
there's more than one way to skin a cat, is what I'm saying.
If what? I'm sorry?
There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah. We really don't skin cats here. But anyway, I'll go with you. But this is the last point. If you're thinking about going to church, say a little prayer before you decide. You could be walking next to it. You could be driving by it or whatever. You could be going to coffee, going to get a bagel or something, and someone's sitting there, and they just suddenly, I like my church, would you like to come? Whatever, corny stuff like that. But if you ask for it, then you're going to get a response. And I know when we said it may not happen at that moment. This is true. It may be like you're walking by and His Spirit leads you. But the point is that you'll know because you asked for it. And God is telling you, I'm always in your life. I'm here. I want to help you because I love you. I want it. All you got to do is ask me. If you ask me to lead, guide, and direct you, I'll do that. But you got to be willing to accept what I say. You say, oh, well, God, I want you to lead me and guide me and all that. And then God said, look, well, I need you to go over here, to this homeless shelter and help serve food. Oh, no, I got a football game I got to go to. I got tickets to the movie. My show coming on. Now, what does God say? He's saying there like, you asked me, and then you just rejected me. You see, all in the same breath. But then you complain about what you got. Anyway, uh, time for your invitation.
We'd like to thank all our viewers, and if there's a topic that you would like to hear us discuss on this panel, please hit us up in the comment section, or if you'd like to be a part of the panel, also hit us up in the comment section, and we look forward to hearing from you.
We have a number of special guests lined up over the rest of the summer. So it's gonna be kind of busy here, but yeah. Again, as Will has said, if you have a comment, question, or whatever, or a recommendation, please feel free to put in the comment section. We do read them, and we will respond to them. Next week's conversation may be part two of this, but I think we have a guest coming, so let's have to look. Anyway, until next time, we'll see you next week, God willing, and the creek don't rise.